Hi submarine friends, welcome back to watching me test out my new diesel electric submarine. So I was planning to actually go to the end of the lake where it's nice and shallow and do a shallow test dive today, but the weather is pretty darn crappy. It's very overcast. I came out yesterday to do it as well, and there was thunder and lightning and rain, and I don't want to deal with that. It's no problem with the submarine, of course, because this is the ultimate bad weather water vessel. But my concern is if I have a problem and I break down, I don't want to be dealing with it in Whitecaps on a windy lake, and I don't want to have to try kayaking in it. And so I've got time. I got all the time in the world. So I know everybody's waiting to see an actual dive, but sorry, safety first for me. So I'm going to give you a tour. People are asking for a tour of the interior of the submarine. So I'm going to start in the back. I'm going to pull this a little closer. Okay, so this is the door to the engine. So the engine is in its own compartment. The compartment is in the water, inside the ballast tank, so you can't see it from outside. It's 30 inches in diameter, 30 inches long, and inside is a 3-cylinder Kubota. So I'm going to open it up. So I made this simple bar here so that I can open it quickly. See how fast I can open that? So now the only thing is, I removed a pipe from in here with a fan, and that held this wire. So now this wire is a nuisance, so I have to fix that. So sometimes the door doesn't want to work properly, so it's a little crowded here, so bear with me. Okay, so there's the engine, and right now the light that's in there is from the camera that's watching the engine, but I'm going to turn on, hold on. Okay, so it's got its own interior light, and I'm just going to unplug the fuel pump. I put it on a plug so that I can have the interior light on without the fuel pump running. So it's just less wiring. Less is better when you build a submarine. So 13 horsepower Kubota engine. I'll get in a little closer here. So 13 horse. It's 18 horsepower. I draw 10 horsepower from it with the hydraulic power that I need. So the cooling system is a keel cooler that I made myself. I didn't know anything about keel coolers. I know a lot about building a submarine. I know very little about boating. So I had to investigate how big the keel cooler has to be, blah, blah, blah. So I built a box keel cooler that's pressure resistant, at least to the depths that I'm going to. And so the coolant just uses the factory water pump, and it just circulates around and around through that keel cooler. Now, in my testing process, I have no thermostat and no restriction because I want to see how effective the cooler is. So if I have a thermostat in there, I really don't know how effective it is. I only know that it works. I want to know that it's super effective. So if I'm in a lake that's warmer, I know I'm going to be okay. So it runs at 52 degrees, wide open, no restrictions, Celsius. Now the manufacturer wants this engine to run at 70 degrees Celsius. So I only have to bump it up 20 degrees. That's a nice comfort zone. I'm happy with that. So I have ball valves right here. I have to have, any time something goes through the hull, it has to have a valve on it to close it off. So this makes sure that lake water can never come in here. So all I have to do is close one of these ball valves ever so slightly and keep closing it slightly until I reach that 71 degrees Celsius, and I leave it there forever. And I like that because it's very smooth. There's no thermostat opening and closing. It's just really smooth. Now, if it turns out that I idle the submarine a lot at a dock or something like that, excuse me, I may decide that a thermostat is a better idea. But when I fire this thing up in the morning, It only takes a few minutes to reach 40 some degrees Celsius. So what happens is when the submarine is in motion, the cooling is better because there's water flowing over the keel cooler. So I have a glow plug button right here. The reason that is here, not in the instrument panel, is sometimes I get in a rush. What can I tell you? And I may decide not to open the engine door and have a look in there and make sure everything's okay. This forces me to do that because this engine won't start without a glow plug. No way, no how. Maybe, obviously it will when it's been running for a while, then it starts perfect, no problem. But cold starts, it always needs a glow plug. So, I did not buy a chrome alternator on purpose, that was by accident. And I'm not sure how well it's working right now, so I need to investigate that. Exhaust manifold, which is super tiny, so I'm not worried about it raising the temperature in there too much. Plus remember, this tank that the engine is sitting in is in cold water all the time, so that really helps with the cooling of that environment in there. Plus it's drawing air all the time because the air is not piped into the air intake, it's just drawn into this space. And I do that so if there's any kind of exhaust leak in there, it just gets sucked into the engine. So I have a water-cooled downpipe. So water just flows through it. It's a stainless steel pipe with a carbon steel jacket around it, and water flows through it constantly, all the time. Then I have a flexible coupler right here. Don't know if you can see that. It's just a stainless steel flexible coupler. And then this section of the tank right here, I don't know if you can see that there's a cutout. That's so that I can just take 2 or 3 bolts out of this. I can take 4 bolts out of the engine and the whole thing slides out. You see it's sitting on 2 tracks. And those tracks come right to the end. So I can literally slide this thing out. I can slide it all the way to the conning tower and hoist it out. And it's not a big job. I can have this engine out in about 20 minutes because I engineered it expecting one day I might have to take it out. So, excuse me. The engine drives a hydraulic pump, and that is what powers the submarine. There's a hydraulic motor attached to the propeller. I made my own bearing assembly. I have a full machine shop at home in my basement. I also have a 26,000 pound lathe in my larger shop, which is a vertical lathe, and I can turn 50 inches if you can believe that. So, hydraulic pump in the back, and I put all new hoses and fittings on it, high quality, 3 braid hose, so that I never have to go back there because I can't get at the pump. I might be able to get the pump out, but I don't think I could get it back in. It would be all by braille. I would actually be tempted to just cut a hole in the back of the tank to access it and then weld it back up after. I mean, this would be a once every 10-year thing. So, that's the engine. Electric fuel pump, and I carry a spare. And it's on a plug, so I can just plug a new one in, hook up the hoses, and I'm back in business. I like everything mechanical and simple. This has no electric shutoff. It has a cable right here. This cable, I just pull it over here, shuts the engine off. It's that simple. That's how I like it. So, moving out, here's the next stage of exhaust. Let me just move this. Oh, by the way, whoa. When I pulled into the little road that comes down here, a little brown bear went running by. I'm telling you, I'm scared of bears. So I've got my bear spray. I had the safety off, ready to shoot. So anyways, water jacket, again, stainless steel piece of pipe, carbon steel outer jacket, only because I didn't have any stainless steel for the outer part. So this is cooled as well, so you can hang on to this when it's running full speed, no problem. It's nice and cool. Then this is an insulated pipe. These are all mandrel bent pipes. I just bought a kit off Amazon and welded it up. Comes up. So right to this point is 1 inch thick ceramic type cloth matting, whatever, fantastic. And then I ran out. So from this section, it's just header wrap with this silver tape over it, heat resistant tape. So this is going to need the same stuff. I just didn't order enough. I didn't know how much I need. I didn't know how effective everything would be, so a lot of this is experimenting. I just don't know. Like I said, I know how to build a submarine, but the diesel part, boy, that's a challenge. That is a real challenge. So anyways, let's move along. Hydraulic tank. This is an air compressor tank that I found at the dump. Had a little rust in it, so I just cut a hole in the end, filled it with nuts and bolts, put it in my lathe and let it turn for an hour. Turned out spotless inside, welded up the hole, and now it's my hydraulic tank. So I put a filter on it right here. Okay, so there's my hydraulic filter, and the tank is not vented. Oh, you're gonna say you have to have a vented tank because, you know, the oil volume changes. Well, it only changes in this situation by heat. So the oil expands and contracts, so it does change volume. I could argue that there's enough airspace in here that it wouldn't need to be vented. It's not vented, but it is vented. There's a line right here. This line is the vent, and it goes to a bladder. So under the deck here, there is a airbag, like a suspension airbag from a pickup, and it can expand and contract. So that's where the air goes when it expands and contracts. So the bag just allows it to do that. I don't want the hydrocarbons in the atmosphere from the hydraulic oil. I don't know how bad it is or what the deal is. I just don't want it. I don't care if it's a little bit dangerous or a lot dangerous. I'm covering my bases. So that's the hydraulic tank. Down under here, that's going to be really hard to see. Right here is the hydraulic valve, 20 gallon per minute flow, double acting log splitter valve. I don't need 20 gallons, but I wanted a 20 gallon valve so there's less restriction because I'm only running 5 gallons a minute, 1800 PSI. And that's what this engine was built to do. The pump was on the engine. I took it right out of a little excavator I had. The submarine was more important to me than the excavator, so I just robbed it out of the excavator. So, hydraulic tank, hydraulic valve. The valve is actuated with a boat control, which I'll show you when we move forward. The sub is bumping into the rocks because it's pretty wavy, you can hear it. So I have a pressure gauge on here as well, so I can monitor the pressure to determine if the pump and motor are a good match. And I haven't got to that yet, to be honest, but everything's cruising nicely, so I'm assuming it's fine. So then moving along, now this is going to be hard to see, but right here is the master switch for the engine and engine battery. So the engine has its own battery, but I don't use it. It's just charged up, sitting there. I use my battery switch up front and I run off the main battery bank. The battery for the engine is a standby. So if I deplete those batteries with the electric thrusters and whatnot, I still have the battery for the engine. I just have to switch it to number 1 and then we're good to go. So then I have a little switch and a speed controller right here, and that is for an internal fan. And what that fan is for is just moving air around the submarine, because when the CO2 starts to build up, it's because you're sitting in the conning tower, the CO2 can build up around you and it gets uncomfortable. So I have a fan sitting there pointing straight up, and I'm still experimenting with the ideal location for it. It used to be here, and that's what I changed. So now the fan is just sitting over there. You'll see it in a minute. And so that's what's back here. Now, underneath my seat, it's too awkward to show you, and there's really no point. There's a bilge pump. And there's a float switch. Let's see if you can see the float switch right here. Okay, I just put that in. Now, plug your ears. It's hooked up to an alarm. So as soon as there's a half an inch or inch of water back here, the sub always tends to ride ass end down. As soon as there's any water in here, then that float switch will go off. Now that float switch is also wired into the temperature sending unit on the engine. So if the engine runs too hot, temperature sending unit grounds the siren and it fires off. So I have the siren on engine temperature and water infiltration. So these two hoses look a little sloppy now because I took this darn pipe out and they were holding it. So that's something I have to fix. Okay, now let's switch over to this side. I'm going to close the engine door because it's covering stuff. Okay, so it's a little dark back here now without that light. So anyways, what we have right here is a radiator that can handle the pressure at depth. So if I ever forgot to shut off the valve for the water system going through, this can handle that pressure because it's actually a hydraulic oil cooler with aluminum tubes. So then there's a fan on it. So the water enters the submarine for the cooling system. It goes through a strainer. So the strainer's right there, and I can see there's debris in it. And it goes through this radiator, and then I can turn the fan on, and that's my air conditioning, and it works like a charm. Boy, it works great. Then below that is an electrical junction box for the electric thruster motors that are outside. So there's solenoids, 80 amp solenoids in here that send power to the thruster motors. And then there's the small electric water pump right here. Now it's off of its mounting position because I had a, I got a bunch of tape hanging here. That's ugly. Oh, that's because that's what was holding the pump on. So the pump is laying like that because I had this hose right here. This hose was a little too high where it goes through the reinforcing ring, and I wasn't getting water. So I had to remove this, and then I had to drop the pump to get it to prime. So now it's working fine, and I also carry a spare pump. So I have a spare fuel pump on board, and I have a spare water pump on board. Okay, so that's what, oh, this is the air filter. Now, the air filter, you know, it's a submarine. It's not really in a dusty environment, so the air filter seems kind of overkill, but it acts as a silencer. It's really a muffler. Because when I close this door, there's a rubber gasket going around, and so it's pretty sealed. Like the difference between noise in here with the door open and closed is unbelievable. Like it's super effective. This is a 3/8 thick steel door for soundproofing. So that works really well. Okay, so let's keep moving. Okay, I'm just gonna move forward now. Okay, so right here, this is my scuba tank, or it's not a scuba tank, it's it got moved in transport. It's a Scott Pack tank. I've got 15 of these, and they're all full, ready to go. So this is what I use for an air supply for the ballast tanks. And then this is my oxygen tank for life support. I'm not going to get into that because I'll make a whole separate video on how the life support system works and how truly simple it is. Okay, so that's the air supply system. And then moving over here, let's see what do we got. Okay, so this is kind of like what you call a sea chest. So this is the main water coming into the submarine. So this fills the water bladder, which is under the floor. So under the floor I have a 350 pound capacity bladder, and that's my fine control ballast. So I flood the forward and aft ballast tanks, and that submerges the submarine to the deck height. Then I start to fill the bladder, and then it completely submerges, and I can stop at any time I want to get it just to the right weight. This here, which comes from the same source, is the water intake for the cooling system, and then this valve is discharge from the bladder. So pretty simple. Everything is within reach of the pilot's seat. Okay, so let's move forward some more. Okay, so now we're looking at my bear spray, and we're looking at the engine management box. So all the wiring for the engine is in this box. That's the only thing that's in there. And so we've got the push button right here to start the engine, and then the two switches to power everything up. Okay, so now, right here, these are the valves for surfacing the submarine. This is a pressure gauge so that I can monitor the pressure that the regulator is putting out. And so I just have to open the valve on the tank and set the regulator off of this right here. And I run it at 150 psi. Also, let me just put that down. Okay. I have this guy right here. So this is my fan that I'm still experimenting with as to its best location. So this is my emergency breathing apparatus in case I have smoke filled into the sub. I can also use it to ditch in the event of a major emergency and I have to ditch, which is pretty unlikely. So then, let's move along. This right here, this is what controls the submarine. So when I'm driving the submarine on the bottom of the lake, I have a thruster motor, and then these are the pumps and cooling fans and whatnot. And that just kind of floats around because I could be sitting in the pilot's seat, I could be sitting up front, wherever. Okay, so now we have my fancy dancy Mercury boat control. So this engages the throttle and forward and reverse on the hydraulics, so that works fantastic. Okay, so now I'm gonna have to jump to the front and switch the camera around. Okay, so here we have switches for the scrubber for the life support system, interior lights, power for my camera in the engine bay, and outside lights. Okay, what else we got going on? Spare oxygen tank right here. I'll be carrying 5 tanks of oxygen. And then this right here, let me just turn that. This right here is my homemade CO2 scrubber. It's on a plug, so you can remove it from the submarine to put absorbent in it. I've just got a toolbox in the way here. But that just sits here and plugs in right here. Nicely out of the way. So this is where I sit when I'm piloting the submarine up front. Now I've got some spare air tanks in the way right now. They're not in a mounted spot. And you may notice some burn marks in the hull. That's because I welded those torpedo tanks on, which are my new ballast weight. I used to have a long keel weight, and I had to remove it because in order for me to legally transport the submarine, it can only weigh 7,500 pounds. So by removing the keel, that's 2,900 pounds, I replaced it with those 2 torpedoes. So I put a crane on my 550 truck so that I can install these 2 torpedoes off the deck of the truck. So I can legally carry them on the truck, but I can't tow them. I know it's a weird rule. So I have to, when I go on a trip with the sub, I have to remove those weights, put them on the truck. When I get to my destination, put them back on, and I'm good to go. It's the only way I can do this legally without getting a Class 1 license, which is a real pain in the butt now. It's really expensive. So there's my view out the front window. I'm going to get closer so that you can see. So that's a pretty good view. Okay. And then, we gotta go over here. Did I show you guys so this is the battery switch. So I'm on all right now, so I am actually taking some power off it should be on 2. So you see it's 11.9, so that alternator is not doing what it's supposed to do. But that's going to be easy to fix. It's a GM 1-wire alternator, so no big deal. So right here, This is the vent to draw air into the fuel tank. The fuel tank is up inside the forward ballast tank. And these are the fuel shut-offs. So the fuel comes in right here and then it returns, because diesel engines circulate the fuel and they do that to cool the fuel. So the lines just run here, they're held on with magnets and they go all the way to the back. And then all my lighting is on magnets. I love magnets. And that's so that I can just move things around as I like. Now one of my favorite things that I did, which I think was pretty darn clever, is I made my seat so that it swings in and out and like this. So I can actually take this, slides right off the end, and then I can stow it away. So if I want to sleep in the submarine overnight, I can get this right out of the way. And so then it's super comfortable. And you know, if it wasn't for these tanks sitting here, look at the room I have. I mean, and I'm sitting on a flat plywood floor. So it's pretty spacious in here for a personal submarine. Now this wire dangling here, I'm gonna have to deal with that. That's for the camera, which is on a magnetic base, or I mean for the little screen to watch the engine. So that's the interior of the submarine. Oh, one thing else I wanted to point out, let me just switch. Okay, so, oh, I can't see. Right here, right there, is where the exhaust goes through the hull. And on the outside is the ball valve that seals it. Right here is where the water discharges. See the valves? So the water discharges right here and it pours over that valve, and that's what cools it. And then this valve is where the bilge pump water discharges, so it goes out the same place. I try to keep the number of penetrations to a minimum. And so that seems to be working. And this right here, this valve, which is an 1.25 inch ball valve, is my air intake when the hatch is closed. So there's a pipe that goes up, across, and back down inside the sail. So if I get overwhelmed with big waves, I still have a fresh air supply. So that's pretty much the interior of the submarine. I guess we can have a look up at the... So there's the hatch. It has a window, and then there's a valve on each side, and that controls the ballast tanks. And this valve here, that controls the valve for the exhaust. I can open and close that valve from inside or outside the submarine. So let's say it's really terribly wavy and the waves will come through the hatch. I can deal with all that from inside. So I don't ever have to open the hatch. I can get fresh air, no problem, and I can drain the exhaust from... No, that's not true. I have a little valve on the muffler stack to drain water out of that. But in an emergency, I don't have to drain that because there's enough volume in this pipe that water volume can sit in here and the engine would just blow it out. So it would not create an emergency situation. So that's the interior of my submarine, guys. It's sparse, it's simple. I'm a minimalist in life and in building my submarine, because you only should put in a submarine what you need. Don't put anything in here that you don't need just to be cool with gadgets and stuff. And I did actually just buy this. This is a carbon monoxide detector and CO2 level indicator. And the CO2 level in here is above 1,000 parts per million right now, so the alarm will go off. So I can be inside a submarine up to 5,000 parts per million for 8 hours legally. Like, that's the rules for operating a submarine. The most I run at is about 12 to 1,500, maybe 1,700 parts per million. And our atmosphere outside is about 400 or 500 parts per million. So a lot of worry about CO2 for no reason. So anyways, that's my interior. I hope you guys like it. If there's something you want to know, just ask in the comments. People have been asking for an interior tour, and I have so many new people watching that I just didn't realize that all the new people haven't seen the interior, because there's like 300 videos on building this, so people that are following along already know every detail of this interior, like in intricate detail. So that was my bad. I should have thought of that. So anyways, keep watching. I'll be diving soon. Unfortunately, this is the worst lake for doing this kind of testing, but it's the only lake within 5 hours that I can launch the submarine off my current trailer. So the problem with this lake is it's either 60 feet deep or a super steep slope. So only the very ends of the lake are very shallow. And I'm hoping that the ends of the lake will give me like 8 feet of water for a shallow test. I have to do that, a manned shallow dive, before I can do the unmanned test, because I need to know how much weight I need to put in the variable tank for it to sink with nobody in it. So everything works hand in hand. I've got a diver ready to come and help me. In a moment's notice, he can come. But I need to do these tests first, and I'm 1,000% sure I could just take it to the middle of the lake and dive it with me in it, but that's irresponsible and arrogant. And that's why that he didn't have to do his pressure testing. You always test a minimum of 1.5 times your operating depth. So I need to send this thing down to 150 feet, but I'm here, so if I do it to 60 feet, I can at least dive to 40 feet and be very comfortable and be very safe. Then we'll take it to Kootenai Lake and we'll do the full depth testing, but I doubt that'll be this year because I have to build a new trailer. I want to build a trailer that has no bottom. So it's a deckless trailer, so it's called a reel trailer. They haul big spools of cable and they just back over the spool and lift them up and transport them. So that's the style of trailer I want to build. I can buy one, but they're $25,000. And I'm not in the mood to spend $25,000 on that. I just spent $10,000 buying that truck just to pull this. It's all it'll ever do. So I'm not wealthy enough to just throw money at something unless it really makes sense. So, I mean, I can afford to do it, but it's just foolish. So I'll jump through the hoops to build my own, and I can build one for probably $5,000, no problem. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I can launch the submarine in 3.5 feet of water. That's all I need. I mean, most boat launches will give you 3.5 feet. I think even the public launch at the far end of the lake I might have 3.5 feet there. When I cruise to that end of the lake, I'll drive in there and see if I can get the sub to that launch. What I'll do is I'll lower the submarine so that it's lower, and then if I hit the bottom, I won't be stuck because I'll just raise the submarine up and I'll back out. Let's see a sailboat do that. See? So I have built-in grounding protection. Okay, that's a pretty long video, so ciao.